We are getting initial reports of a phenomenon on a global scale. There are no fish. I repeat, sources from every coastline are confirming they are simply gone. Okay, imagine hearing that. A strained news anchor's voice, yeah?
Yeah.
Cutting through static.
Mm-hmm.
Then you see it. Empty trawler nets being pulled up. A fish market in Southeast Asia, totally silent, vendor just staring.
Feel it.
And then maybe a scientist, just slamming a desk, charts totally flatlined. The date on the screen, Friday, July 4, 2025, 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
A specific, almost mundane time for something so catastrophic.
Right. So let's unpack this. A world where the ocean it just goes silent. No fish. None. Gone. What happens next? That's the really chilling question we're diving into today. Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Our mission, like always, is to dig into these big thought experiments, these detailed sources, and pull out the key nuggets of knowledge. We want to give you a shortcut to being well-informed, especially about how interconnected and maybe how fragile our planet really is. And what's truly astonishing about this particular hypothetical is just how fast one single biological event, poof, the fish vanish, could unravel, well, everything. Our complex global systems.
It's not just about missing fish for dinner, then.
Not at all. It's a stark look, almost immediate, at humanity's deepest vulnerabilities. We're exploring something imagined, yes, but it forces us, really forces you, to confront our very real and maybe precarious reliance on the ocean.
So this day zero, as the source calls it, wasn't like an earthquake or, an invasion, no warning signs.
None whatsoever. Just silence.
Yeah.
An unfathomable biological collapse.
And we're talking every fish, sardines, tuna, everything.
Everything. Gone. Vanished. The source throws out some possibilities. Maybe a superpathogen, an evolutionary glitch, or maybe even a rogue experiment gone terribly wrong.
But why is this vanishing act so much worse than, say, a massive regional famine or a war? What makes the fish disappearance unique?
That's where it gets really interesting and, frankly, terrifying. It wasn't just a small ecological issue. It was like someone yanked a absolutely critical thread from the entire global food web.
Okay.
And by extension, the global economy. Unlike a famine, which might hit one region or a conflict with specific sides, this was invisible, universal, and immediate. You lose a primary food source for billions, just like that.
Billions. How many exactly?
Nearly 3 billion people. That's how many rely on ocean protein as a primary part of their diet.
Wow. 3 billion.
And look at the protein stats. Fish make up about 17% of global animal protein overall. But then you go to coastal Asia, coastal Africa.
Yeah.
That number jumps over 50% in many places.
50. Half their animal protein.
Yeah, at least. So for these huge populations, this July 4th, 2025 event, it wasn't just about losing a food choice. It was about basic survival.
It exposed a vulnerability we just don't think about.
Exactly. A profound vulnerability hidden in plain sight.
And the very first people to really feel this, to understand the sheer scale of it, must have been the fishermen, right?
Absolutely. Day zero. Those first 24 hours. Picture it in, say, Senegal.
Okay.
Sardinella nets that families have used for generations, suddenly pulling up nothing but water. Empty.
Empty.
Lifelong fishermen,
Yeah.
people who know every current, every season, just completely baffled. Maybe trying deeper spots, different techniques. Nothing.
This wasn't just Senegal.
No. The same scene, the same confusion and dawning horror, it was playing out everywhere. Peru, the Pacific Islands, China's massive fleets, Indonesia's crowded harbors.
Everywhere the ocean touches land.
Precisely. Overnight, the world's oceans effectively turned into deserts. Silent, empty deserts.
So what did that do to the economy instantly?
Oh, the economic shockwave was immediate and just staggering.
How big are we talking?
Well, think about the global fishing industry. It's huge, about $400 billion a year.
400 billion.
Annually. Gone. Halted. Instantly. To put that in perspective, that's bigger than the entire GDP of quite a few countries just vanishing off the books.
Okay, so stocks crashed. Seafood companies.
Plummeted. Straight to zero, basically. No product, no future value. But, the stock market crash, that was just the shiny surface.
The tip of the iceberg, yeah.
Exactly. The real story, the immediate human cost was immense. 60 million jobs.
60 million. Just gone.
Directly tied to fishing.
Yeah.
Vanished. In a day.
Unbelievable.
And then add the supply chain. Processing plants, trucking, shipyards, canneries, restaurants, markets.
Everything connected to it.
Everything.
Yeah.
Another 820 million livelihoods. Maybe not totally gone overnight, but immediately, drastically impacted. We're not just talking about lost wages here.
No, it's more than that.
It's whole ways of life.
Hmm.
Traditions, communities built over generations around the sea, suddenly just destroyed.
So within 24 hours, panic.
Oh, yeah. Panic was definitely simmering. You could feel it building in coastal communities everywhere. It was undeniably a global crisis right from hour one.
Okay, fast forward just 1 week. Day 7, the source calls it the Great Empty. And that's when the hunger really started to bite, didn't it? Especially in places where fish was the staple, the cheap protein.
Exactly. Places like Mozambique, Bangladesh, the Solomon Islands. Nations our source highlights specifically. Fish wasn't a luxury there. It was the affordable, accessible protein foundation.
And suddenly, it's gone.
Gone. And there weren't immediate substitutes just lying around for tens of millions of people. What do you replace it with? Overnight, at that scale and cost.
So how did governments react? How did the food system hold up? Or did it?
It didn't, really. The response was, well, chaos. It exposed just how brittle our global food system actually is.
Brittle how?
Well, government scrambled, they made promises, announced aid packages, started tapping into strategic food reserve.
But it wasn't enough.
Not even close. A drop in the now empty ocean. The real problem was the immediate pressure on everything else.
Like land-based protein.
Precisely. Demand just flooded those markets. Chicken, pork, beef, even basic staples like beans and lentils. Prices shot up.
Yeah.
Dramatically.
So it becomes unaffordable for many.
Very quickly. It was a domino effect, unfolding with terrifying speed. The supply chains, they were built for a world with fish. They just buckled under this sudden, massive pressure.
And the consequences.
Yeah.
What did that look like on the ground?
It got ugly, fast. Reports of fights breaking out in grocery stores over the last packages of meat. Food riots flared up, especially in port cities where the loss was most visible, most immediate.
So that first week.
That first week marked the start, the beginning of this silent march of malnutrition, affecting millions directly. It changed societies almost overnight.
Let's jump ahead again. 1 month after the fish vanished. The scars weren't just economic or social anymore, were they? The environment itself was reacting.
Profoundly. The ecological fallout started becoming really visible.
Like the algal blooms mentioned in the source.
Exactly. Fish normally graze on algae, keeping it in check.
Yeah.
Without them.
It just grows wild.
Explodes, massive blooms covering vast areas. These blooms suck oxygen out of the water as they decay.
Creating those dead zones we hear about?
Huge dead zones. So large they were apparently visible from space, a clear sign the whole marine ecosystem was starting to unravel.
In the animals that eat fish.
Tragic. Seals, dolphins, seabirds, anything that relied on fish began starving, washing ashore in large numbers. It was a grim, visible marker of a food chain just severed at its base.
Wow. And it didn't stop there, did it? The physical environment changed too.
Right. Coral reefs, already stressed, started degrading faster without the fish that help maintain balance. Mangrove forests, which rely on intricate coastal ecosystems, began to erode.
Which affects coastal defenses.
Weakens them significantly.
Right.
So beyond the food crisis, you have increased vulnerability to storms, erosion. It's all connected.
Okay, so we have the immediate economic hit to fishing, the hunger crisis, the environmental damage. Did the economic fallout keep spreading beyond that initial $400 billion?
Oh, absolutely. It revealed that the ocean wasn't just this isolated food basket. It was a massive interconnected engine, economic and ecological. Well, the collapse didn't stay contained at just fishermen and seafood companies. Think about processing plants shutting down, shipbuilders losing orders for new trawlers.
Tourism too, I bet. Coastal tourism.
Huge impact on tourism. Who wants to visit a dead coastline? Dive resorts, whale watching tours? Entire sectors just crumbled. Millions more were added to the unemployed, far beyond the initial fishing jobs. The circle of despair just kept widening.
And the source mentions historians drawing parallels.
They did. Almost immediately, historians started pointing to past collapses, like the Maya, potentially facing societal breakdown due to severe drought, or Easter Island.
The deforestation, right, using up all their resources.
Exactly. Ecological self-destruction. These weren't perfect analogies, of course, but the parallels were chilling.
So what's the core lesson from those historical echoes, beyond just, don't run out of resources?
It's a consistent warning, isn't it? Civilizations that ignore the limits, that fail to respect their natural capital, that overstretch, they face consequences, sometimes profound ones.
And on July 4th, 2025, in this scenario,
the Ocean's Bill arrived, all at once. Payment demanded for decades, maybe centuries, of collective overreach. It echoed those ancient warnings with terrifying clarity.
Okay, let's look even further out. 1 year. 1 year after the Great Empty. What did the world look like?
Grim. That's the word the source uses.
Yeah.
A grim new normal. The shock had faded, replaced by the grinding reality.
Meaning famine was widespread.
Dominating headlines, yes. No longer isolated incidents, but widespread famine. The World Health Organization, in this scenario, reported a devastating reversal of decades of progress against malnutrition.
Stunted growth in children.
Millions of children stunted, their potential just, erased by lack of protein in those critical early years, an entire generation scarred.
And the source mentioned something unprecedented about population growth.
Yes, for the first time in modern history, overall human population growth didn't just slow down, it stopped. And in many regions, it actually began to reverse.
That's a massive demographic shift.
Unprecedented, driven by famine, disease, and the sheer breakdown of systems.
And with this level of scarcity and suffering, what happened between nations? Geopolitically.
That's where things got really dangerous. It underscores how quickly resource scarcity can fuel conflict.
Food wars, is that what the source describes?
Essentially, yes. Conflicts breaking out over the remaining resources.
Oh.
Silos of grain became strategic assets. Control over freshwater sources became paramount.
And nations with food.
Food-rich nations largely sealed their borders, prioritizing their own populations, hoarding resources. It became a desperate global scramble for survival, fracturing international cooperation.
Really unstable world.
Incredibly unstable,
Yeah.
driven by the most basic need, food.
And within societies themselves, was there a divide?
A stark divide, yes, between those who could still afford the now incredibly expensive land-based proteins and the vast majority forced to survive on starches, on whatever they could grow or find.
What about fish farming? Aquaculture? Couldn't that fill the gap?
You'd think so, but no. Most large-scale aquaculture, especially for predator fish, actually relies heavily on fish meal made from, well, wild-caught fish.
Ah, so its own supply chain collapsed.
Exactly. It couldn't scale up. In fact, it largely collapsed too.
But human ingenuity didn't just stop, did it? What about new solutions? Vertical farms? Lab-grown meat?
Oh, research accelerated dramatically. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Investment poured into vertical farming, lab-grown proteins, alternative food sources. But the key thing the source emphasizes is
They weren't ready.
they were solutions for tomorrow, maybe the day after tomorrow. They couldn't fix the immediate, devastating crisis happening today.
So after a year of this, humanity endured, but changed.
Endured, yes, but profoundly diminished. It forced a brutal reevaluation of everything: our relationship with the planet, our economic models, our interconnectedness.
It's a really sobering thought about resilience, isn't it? And adaptation.
It is. It shows that while we are adaptable, sometimes the shock to the system is just too fast, too fundamental for our current ingenuity to cope with immediately. Nature demanding a price that innovation couldn't instantly pay. Ultimately, this whole scenario, this crisis, it just reflects humanity's overreach, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Our collective tendency to ignore the ocean's critical and finite role.
Yeah.
And just how interconnected everything is. Losing the fish wasn't just losing food.
No.
It wiped out a $400 billion economy. It disrupted a vital climate regulator. It destroyed a lifeline for, nearly 1 billion people all told, when you factor in dependence.
1 billion people.
From that fisherman in Mozambique pulling up an empty net,
Right.
to the broker in Tokyo watching markets evaporate, it's all linked. It's a story that really urges us to pay attention, to heed nature's warnings now.
Absolutely. And this deep dive into a world without fish, it's really just one example of the kind of incredible insights you can unlock when you seek out well-researched, thought-provoking content like this. And, you know, if you want to keep exploring fascinating insights and deep dives into critical topics, things that really make you think about the world, you'll definitely want to check out Mind Expansion Daily. They do fantastic work over there, always bringing you great information that genuinely helps you understand the complex world around us. So make sure to like and subscribe to Mind Expansion Daily wherever it is you get your insights.
It's a good reminder. And this story really hammers home that interconnectedness, that fisherman, that broker, their fates tied together by invisible threads. It forces you to ask what fragile systems in your own life maybe, or in the wider world around you, what might be closer to collapse than you realize, if just one single, maybe overlooked thread were suddenly pulled.
That is definitely something to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this pretty intense deep dive today.
Yeah.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll be back with another deep dive very soon.